Kirtan, and then we'll discuss a bit more of the Bhagavad Gita and continue with our chapter 1, understanding of the chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita. And anything else going on this weekend? Prem Prabhu is the main organizer, man. Event organizer. No.
Tomorrow we have a celebration of Navaratri at Pinky's house in Tamil.
Oh, that's right.
So if anyone can come, please join us. We'll be talking pastimes of Mahamaya. Very important and very revealing.
Yeah.
But what was happening here? I must go.
Anyway, we're going to chant some of the Maha Mantra. Those of you who are new or returning. Maha Mantra, we explained about the Maha Mantra. Okay, so just a little explanation of this mantra we chant. Maha in Sanskrit means great, because everything we follow here comes from the Sanskrit language, which was mostly written down around about 5,000 years ago. So it's very ancient. And so Maha Mantra, Maha means great, Mantra means, it's two words, Manas from mind, Tra meaning to deliver. So Maha Mantra, so mantra is a sound vibration which delivers the mind. That's the literal translation of it. But of course, this Maha Mantra, there are many, many mantras, thousands and thousands, innumerable mantras for different things from this Vedic culture, from spiritual culture, not only for spiritual things but also for material things also, right? So we see when we read the histories, we read the Srimad Bhagavatam, and also on the Battle of Kurukshetra, I believe, also to some degree, some weapons and things were fired by sound, by mantra. So mantras are extremely powerful. There are mantras for health, mantras for all sorts of things. But this particular mantra, this one we chant, is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In this age that we live in, Kali Yuga, which started around 5,000 years ago, we're about 5,000 years into this Kali Yuga, is the recommended process of meditation for this age, because it's a very disturbed age we live in, age of Kali. So in the age of Kali we need a simple form of meditation, because other forms of meditation can be very difficult. Buddhist meditation, all this sort of meditations where you have to go and sit quietly somewhere, almost impossible actually in this age. So this mantra can be chanted anywhere, anytime, under any circumstances. There are no hard and fast rules for chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, so it's been made very simple for us. It also includes all of these other millions of mantras, thousands of different mantras that are chanted. If you go to the temple and you see a fire sacrifice, for example, a fire yagis, you'll hear all sorts of mantras being chanted. Yeah. So there are many mantras. This one includes everything. It's been made very easy for us to achieve spiritual realization, peace of mind, and have a happier and more fulfilled life, but just by chanting this mantra, which was brought to the West by Guru Srila Prabhupada over there. But it was enunciated, it started to spread about 500 years ago by the last incarnation of Krishna, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He had this mission to flood the world with this blissful chanting. So that's an overview of this chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. As you can see, looking at the song sheet, there are other mantras for different things, but this one is the most important one. So this is the one we chant mostly these days.
Swami,
line all together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. That was lovely. Transcendental choir. So, that's mantra meditation, right? Noisy mantra meditation. That's in fact the noise, the more noise we make, the better. So let's just have a look for you, see if we can find something a little bit about the mantra. Okay, so this is another little quote from the book, The Nectarian Ocean of the Holy Name. I love these titles, these books, because it does, this chanting produces nectar, right? Yeah? Everybody can feel that, right? Yeah? Yeah. It's nectar. How do you put these things into words? How do you describe the taste of nectar in words? You can't, really, can you? No, but it's a shared experience, right? Yes. We don't have words to describe the experience of a transcendental experience or a spiritual experience. It's out of the framework of the material world. So somebody described it once to me like trying to explain a sunset to a blind person. How do you do that? Verbally you can't, but there's an experience that we all tune into when we chant, yes, together or on our own or whatever. If we do it properly, of course, and we calm the mind, because that's the point of meditation in the first place. That's the starting point, isn't it? To get the mind calm, and then, as we were discussing last night in our book club, then you start to see things clearly. Then things begin to make sense, things to fall into place. And the best means to do that is by chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. The easiest method. So here, from this book, The Nectarian Ocean of the Holy Name, is a little something that reflects that thought. These 16 names, composed of 32 syllables, are the only means to counteract the destructive influences of Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga being, as we were discussing, the age that we live in now, which started 5,000 or so years ago. So it's a very destructive age with very destructive influences, and we can see it all around us. Everywhere we look, everywhere in the world, we see what's happening. If we have the vision to see that, you know, people are making a mess of everything, right? Yeah? They're messing the world up, they're messing themselves up, and they're messing everybody else up. You know, because they're approaching everything from the wrong angle. And because they're influenced by they're being influenced and controlled by the destructive elements in Kali Yuga. Yes? Whereas us, hopefully, we're escaping destructive elements of Kali Yuga by immersing ourselves in an alternative way of life, an alternative way of living, an alternative way of consciousness, way of thinking, way of seeing, and way of acting, as opposed to most of what the material world is doing these days. The destructive influences of Kali Yuga. So it says here, it's the only means to counteract these destructive influences, which is quite interesting. Lord Chaitanya said that, yeah? It's the only way, right? There isn't any other way. We can have some temporary relief from various things, but to provide permanent relief, it's the only way. So after having studied the Vedas being this Sanskrit literature that we take all our teachings from, initially, the Veda means another Sanskrit word which means knowledge. The Vedas are knowledge. And if we understand the Vedas, and there are various Vedas, and there are innumerable scriptures and books written in Sanskrit, a lot that haven't even been translated yet, but describe the material world and everything else. A lot of them are to do with the material energy, not so much the spiritual energy. But we have the Vedanta, the cream of the Vedas, which we read and study. That will help us. So the Vedas, after having studied the Vedas, we cannot find a method of religion more appropriate for this age than chanting of Hare Krishna mantra. Thus, the Maha Mantra, consisting of 16 names, destroys the gross and subtle material coverings of the jiva. Now the jiva is us, the soul. Yes, that's the person, the real person within the body, within the material covering of the body, the mind, the intelligence, and the ahankara, the false ego. These are all material. The soul, us, the person, is actually spiritual, or transcendental to all this. Then, if we chant this Maha Mantra, the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna will appear before him like the brilliant beams of the sun after the clouds are dispelled. That's from the Kali Sanshantara Upanishad, which is a Veda, one of the Vedas. So, Krishna reveals himself also. Not only do we get peace of mind, which is most people when they come to these programs, or back in the early days anyway, when we used to have the shop, people would come and we would ask, why are you coming? Oh, I want some peace of mind. Yes. Oh, I want some peace in my life. I want peace of mind, I'm disturbed, you know what I mean? Most people realise that to some degree, and they want a bit of peace in their lives, right? A peace of mind. So that's the first thing, yeah? But then beyond that, something else starts to happen. Once you've got that peace of mind, once you've got some realisation, once you've tuned into this mantra and what it does, then things expand even more and more and more, and we have a lot of other stuff going on, which appears. And the ultimate goal of all of this is that Krishna, this personality over here, will appear before us. We'll see him, we'll realise, we'll have realisation, not only of us, who we are, but also our relationship with him, and everything else, and all the material energy and everything. So, and it's all explained in the Vedas, so we can understand it by reading, we can understand it by listening to our gurus and hearing the teachings, but we can also experience it from within, because we are full of knowledge, actually, but we're covered. And that covering of the material coverings gets wiped away or cleaned the more we chant and the more we engage in spiritual practice. Dear Lord, please help me to chant with attention and affection. Please help to destroy these gross and subtle coverings that separates me from you. Now, the gross and subtle coverings. The gross coverings are earth, water, fire, air. They're the gross material elements. The subtle ones are ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Ahankara, false ego. We have ego. That's okay. A lot of spiritual practices, they aim to destroy the ego, right? But we don't say that's correct. Krishna doesn't say that's correct. No. We are always individual. There is always a sense of I. Yes? We don't want to destroy that sense of I and merge into oneness or nothingness. That won't last anyway, if you do. Because we're always individual. We're always individual. Yes? Like I say, as much as I love all of you, I don't want to be I want to be one with you. Isn't it? We always remain an individual. There's always, when we have relationship, then love exists. And that's the whole purpose of this bhakti yoga, to develop a loving relationship with Krishna, ultimately. Yes? And that is bliss. That is pure, transcendental bliss. Yes? Because there's nothing higher than love, right? No matter how you examine it or whatever, love is the highest thing. Yes? And love with the Supreme Being from whom everything emanates, including us, there is nothing higher than that. So that we can experience just by chanting. Just by chanting these three words. When you meditate on that, just the thought of that is quite amazing. So this chanting, this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, is extremely amazing, and it gets more and more amazing. As I've said many times, and everybody's agreed many times, some of us here have been chanting for 45 years, and it still doesn't get tiresome, boring. It just gets increasingly nicer and nicer and nicer. Yes. Whereas my iPhone, I've had for 2 years now, I'm getting fed up with it all another one. Right? That doesn't happen with spiritual things. Yeah. No. So take this chanting, always do it every day, as much as you possibly can, wherever you want, whenever you like to. It's very nice. And it is, as it says there, it's a recommended process for meditation, for spiritual realization, for freedom from this horrible conditioning and brainwashing and influence of Kali in this dreadful age we live in. And it won't get any better, unfortunately. Over time, this Kali Yuga just degenerates and degenerates and degenerates. The material world, this planet that we live on, is a middle planetary system. There are different planetary systems, and we're in the middle. The Earth planet is one of the middle planetary systems. It's not too bad, but it's not very good. There are much worse planets, and there are much higher planets. This one is a good one in many ways. We're fortunate because it gives us the opportunity to elevate ourselves. And we've been given this beautiful gift by Lord Chaitanya to help us to do that, get out of it. So, anyway, so keep chanting, and it will have the desired effect. Okay, you're gonna sing.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to? Okay, then we're going. Another mantra, or another prayer or mantra that we sing is this Radha Madhava, which is on your book on sheet. And this was our Guru Srila Prabhupada always sang this one before Bhagavad Gita class. It's written actually by his Guru's father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's very nice. So we do that one with the transcendental kids down here. So, carrying on with the Bhagavad Gita, where for those of you who haven't been around the last few weeks, we've started going through the Bhagavad Gita from start to finish. As we said, there are 700 verses in the Bhagavad Gita, so 700 weeks we'll get finished. So you're in for the long haul. Then we start the Srimad Bhagavatam, 18,000 verses.
Then Mahabharata.
And then yes.
100,000.
How many years?
No, I don't think tonight. I think we'll be reading a few verses. I don't think we'll be reading one tonight, because this I think where we've got to in chapter 1 is a little bit of a. There are a few verses where it's a bit of a list of personalities that are on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. We've heard about the chapter we are reading back, chapter 1, is called Observing the Armies. So it's a bit of a setup to actually, before the Bhagavad Gita gets into the instruction about where it's set. It's part of the book, the Mahabharata. It's a very fascinating and wonderful book, story, history, which everybody should, if they can, read or listen to the audio book at some point. It's wonderful. Mahabharata's amazing, isn't it? It's the greatest story ever told, I think. I don't know one better. So we're going to start, I think, verse 5, is it? Verse 5, is it? Where did you finish last time? Did we finish with that? It was really nice last week. We heard about 2 and 3. So verse 4, we start, verse 4. Okay. So I'll read the... I think we'll just probably go through the verses actually in the English because of time. We won't be doing too much. So verse 4. Here in this army are many heroic bowmen, equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna, great fighters like Yuyudhana, Virat and Drupada. Does everybody know who these people are, just out of interest? Who doesn't know who these personalities are? Who's not heard of the Mahabharata or read it or know these stories? Okay.
Yeah, I know I've been diving a little bit. I know a few of the names, but I don't really know.
Right, okay, yeah. This, I mean, we wouldn't, I don't want to start, we would get back into to get into the Mahabharata is a rather large endeavour. So at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, we're just really giving an overview of the Mahabharata. But this whole Bhagavad Gita is spoken on a battlefield, as we know, and these are the people who are on this battlefield. It's really listing some of the great warriors who are fighting on both sides. So Dhritarashtra, who is blind, I don't know if you were here for that part of it, hearing that Sanjay is narrating to him the scenes on the battlefield. So they're going through this conversation about who's there, why are they there, what are they, what these great heroes are, whose side they're on. The setup is interesting. It's the same with a lot of stuff in Bhakti Yoga and with this. You can really go into great depth into all these verses and all of these things very much, can't we? When you look at all this history, all of the personalities, all of the relationships, there is a lot to learn, and you can really, really go into it. Better than Coronation Street. Or Emmerdale, right? These personalities and their relationships and everything else are amazing. And we'll learn a little bit about one in particular tonight. So they're listing all these fighters and warriors. There are also, verse 5 is, there are also great, heroic, powerful fighters like Drishtaketu, Chekitana, Kashiraja, Purujit, Kuntibhoja, Shaibya. These are all names of great warriors, personalities on the battlefield. Verse 6, there are the mighty Yudamanyu, the very powerful Uttamauja, the son of Subhadra and the sons of Draupadi. All these warriors are great chariot fighters. Verse 7, but for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force. Text 8, there are personalities like you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashvatthama, Vikarna, the son of Somadatta, called Bhurishrava, who are always victorious in battle. Text 9. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons and are all experienced in the military science. Text 10. Our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. So, I'll read the purport on this one. Herein is an estimation of the comparative strength is made by Duryodhana. Duryodhana is the baddie in this particular instance, yes? If you look at it from bad and good, our side, the Kuru side, the Pandava side are the goodies, and that's the side where Krishna and Arjuna are on. Yes, they're the Pandavas, and the Kurus are the other side. So Duryodhana is Kurus. So is grandfather Bhishma. So herein is an estimation of the comparative strength is made by Duryodhana. He thinks that the strength of his armed forces is immeasurable, being specifically protected by the most experienced general, grandfather Bhishma. On the other hand, the forces of the Pandavas are limited, being protected by less experienced general, Bhima, who is like a fig in the presence of Bhishma. Duryodhana was always envious of Bhima because he knew perfectly well that if he should die at all, he would be only killed by Bhima. But at the same time, he was confident of his victory on account of the presence of Bhishma, who was far superior general. His conclusion that he would come out of the battle victorious was well ascertained. Text 11. All of you must now give full support to grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army. Purport. Duryodhana, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considered that others might think that they had been considered less important. So in his usual diplomatic way, he tried to adjust the situation in the above words. He emphasized that Bhishma Dev was undoubtedly the greatest hero. He was an old man, so everyone must especially think of his protection from all sides. He might become engaged in the fight, and the enemy might take advantage of his full engagement on one side. Therefore, it was important that other heroes not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the phalanx. Duryodhana clearly felt that the victory of the Kurus depended on the presence of Bhishma Dev. He was confident of the full support of Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya in the battle because he well knew that they did not even speak a word when Arjuna's wife, Draupadi, in her helpless condition, had appealed to them for justice while she was being forced to appear naked in the presence of the great generals in the assembly. This is another instance from the Mahabharata story which we might touch on in a minute when we talk about Bhishma Dev a little bit, because it's an interesting, very interesting subject actually, and very thought-provoking in many ways. Although he knew that the two generals had some sort of affection for the Pandavas, he hoped that these generals would now completely give it up, as they had done during the gambling performances. This instance with Draupadi was during a gambling match. Now we've got to remember, these people are Kshatriyas, they're warriors, they're fighters. They're not brahmanas or priests or like this. These are really very strong, very powerful warrior, kshatriya. They're called kshatriyas in Sanskrit. So mustn't confuse them with the devotee brahmanas who, they're not monks or anything like that. They're very, very strong, very powerful men, who are fighting. They're trained to fight. Heroes. The strong heroes we see in the stories. That's what these people are. And in verse 12. Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making the sound like the roar of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy. Purport. The grandsire of the Kuru dynasty could understand the inner meaning in the heart of his grandson Duryodhana, and out of his natural compassion for him, he tried to cheer him up by blowing his conch shell very loudly, befitting his position as a lion. Indirectly, by the symbolism of the conch shell, he informed his depressed grandson Duryodhana that he had no chance of victory in the battle, because the Supreme Lord Krishna was on the other side. But still, it was his duty to conduct the fight, and no pains would be spared in that connection. So, we can see here from these few verses that seems like the most important personality on this battlefield, apart from Krishna and Arjuna, is Bhishma Dev. Yes? Now, who knows who Bhishma Dev is? I'm sure that many of you do. Okay. So let's a little history of Bhishma Dev. Yes. So Bhishma Dev, look, his grandfather Bhishma. Yes. In the Mahabharata really begins with the story of Bhishma Dev, actually. And actually, the point of Bhishma Dev is an extremely important character. This whole battle, actually, he's the seed of why this battle is actually beginning in the first place, actually. And the reason for that is because Bhishma, back in Dwapara Yuga, there was a king. Hastinapur, which is New Delhi now, very powerful king, yes. And let me just check, because these histories I get a bit confused with the names sometimes. I'm starting to remember these names, so just to make sure. Sorry? Hastinapur, yes, that's right, yeah. And there was a great king, Shantanu was the king, King Shantanu. And he was walking by the river Ganga one day, the river Ganges, and he saw this beautiful lady. And King Shantanu was a very great king, but he had one major fault. He fell in love very easily. Yes. He was a very powerful personality. But he was walking by the Ganges. This beautiful lady appeared, and he immediately was besotted with her and fell in love with her. Yeah. So he approached her and he asked for her favour and told her that he was in love with her and everything else. And he wanted to marry her. So she agreed to do that, but with two conditions. One, that he never ever questioned anything she did, and the second thing was that he never asked who she was. That were the two conditions. So he was besotted, so he agreed with that. Yes? And so they got married, and after some time they had a baby, a boy. And he went to see this baby boy, and he saw her take the baby boy to the Ganges and put the baby in the river. And he was shocked. But then he remembered his vow that he mustn't ask why she was doing this, and she did, and everything else. But he was, she was literally just drowning the child, put the child in the river. Yeah. So he let it go because he'd made a vow. And these people in these times when they made vows, they stuck to them, right? Yeah? So anyway, this went on 7 children they had, and she did the same thing with every baby. Put the baby in the Ganges River. Killed the baby. Yeah? So anyway, this lady then, his wife, had an 8th child. By this time, he couldn't take any more. So he told her, stop this, you can't do this anymore, I can't stand this anymore, I'm not going to let you kill any more of my children. So she said, do you remember your vow? You told me that, I told you mustn't ask my question anything I do. He said, well, I'm not putting up with it any longer. So anyway, so this baby, she said, okay, that's it. Well, our marriage is finished. I will go now, and I'll take this baby with me. So she took the baby with her and she went. And then she said, but before she went, she said, I better tell you who I am. I'm Ganga. I am the goddess of this river, Mother Ganga. Yeah? And the 7 children who I've killed were the Vasus. You know, previously these children in the previous lives there's 8 Vasus. The 8th child she took with them had been cursed. Yes? And this, she was just fulfilling that curse, basically. And actually she was saving the babies actually from a very, very nasty thing. So what would have happened to them would have been worse than what she actually did. Now remember that nobody dies, right? You have to remember these activities are all done with a spiritual perspective. You know, we tend to be attached to the material body. Same with the battle of Kurukshetra, you know. Krishna's instructions are very important. You have to understand that, well, Arjuna, that nobody dies. You know, this is all necessary, but don't think that everybody is going to die, because they don't, ultimately, because we're all spiritual. So it's the same with these babies. She was just negating the curse. But the 8th child was cursed to have a long and healthy life and become a very powerful personality, but have a lot of trouble in their life as well. Lead a very disturbed life. This baby is called Devadatta. So she took the baby, and Shantanu, the king, was very distressed by all this, of course. But anyway, years and years went by. He often went to the river to see if he could find Ganga, and never saw her again, a child. And then one day he went to the river, and there was a boy, a young man, who was firing arrows, very strong looking, very, capable looking warrior boy. And it was Devadatta. And Ganga appeared and said, well, here's your boy. He's been trained up by Parashuram, I believe, by the greatest guru of warriors and everything, and he's perfect now to carry on being the prince. And he was called Devadatta, and he became a very popular prince. He was very popular, very powerful, and he was engaged in lots of heroic activity. It was fantastic. Then one day Shantanu, the king, was walking down by the Yamuna river, and he saw this beautiful lady, and he fell in love. And her name was Satyavati. And she was a daughter of a fisherman, yes? But he was besotted again, and he wanted to marry her. And she said, well, I'll do that, but you have to get permission from my father first. So Shantanu went to her father and asked for permission. He said, well, I will give you permission to marry my daughter, but on one condition, that any sons that she has will become the next king, the royal. So he said, well, I've already got a son, Devadatta, that is going. He said, well, I won't give permission for you to marry. So he said, well, I'm not doing it. And he went back to his palace and everything else, very miserable, because he'd really fallen in love with this Satyavati. And Devadatta saw that his father was very miserable after some time. He was wondering why he was so miserable. And he found out that it was because of this rejection by Satyavati's father. So Devadatta went to the fisherman king, I think he was a fisherman king, and asked him about it. And then just cut a long story short, he said, okay, well, I will renounce the kingship, If it's going to make my father happy, marry your daughter, and then the children, then whoever the sons can become the next king, and I'll renounce that, I won't take that. Then the fisherman, well, no, hold on, but what she said, but what if you have children? Then, your sons will then become, next in line for the king. So I don't want that. So he said, okay. So Devadatta took this vow, very powerful vow, that he would lead a life of celibacy. He would renounce the royal line. He would become a celibate. And at that time, then he made this very powerful vow. The demigods showered flowers from the sky. And they heard this Bhishma. So he became Bhishmadev. And this is this personality we're talking about now. Now, to cut a long story short, this is all in the Mahabharata, and you really have to read it to understand all of the ins and outs of this whole story. But Bhishmadev, to understand what a powerful personality he was, celibacy as a thing is a very, very powerful thing to do, actually. and it makes you extremely powerful. Now Bhishma was the son of a very powerful divine personality anyway. So he was already a divine personality. He's a Mahajan. He's one of the 12 great personalities in the universe, in the creation. So he's a very powerful personality. But having a life of celibacy and everything had made him even more powerful. He's the Kuru. He's the grandsire of the whole Kuru dynasty, even though he didn't marry and didn't have children. Yeah? So understanding how powerful this personality is extremely important. But the point is that the seed that he planted by taking that vow is why this problem has started. Because Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, these Kurus have come from a lesser seed, if you like. They're not royalty, they've come from a line of fishermen. So actually that's important to understand. If we can understand that reasoning behind that, divine kings and queens are divine, yes? They have a divine lineage from, but of course because of Bhishma's vow, he upset that whole thing. So there they have non-spiritual or non-religious motivations because of Bhishma's vow. So there's, if you like, a bad seed is in the royal line. Yeah? So you have to study the Mahabharata and more of the story to really understand the nature of the Pandavas and the Kurus and why all this war started. But it's actually Bhishma's vow that caused the problem in the first place. Even though he was doing it out of his, what he thought was duty and loyalty. And then comes the question of Dharma. And this is where this whole situation becomes really interesting, you know what I mean? Because, and we can have conversations about these verses and these personalities can really go very deep to understand spiritual understanding and how the material energy works and how Dharma works and how karma works and all these things, It's a very, very interesting situation when we really examine it, isn't it? And the intricacies of it are very, very deep, and we could, study this stuff for forever. Quite amazing. Is that clear? Yeah, so this is Bhishma Dev. Now Bhishma is extremely powerful. He also had a boon that he could die when he chose to die. So at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, at the end of the battle of Kurukshetra actually, when you see Bhishma Dev's situation, you will understand that when we get to that, how extremely potent and powerful he was. But he was also very dharmic. Now, everybody know what Dharma means? Everybody's heard of Dharma, I suppose most people do. Yeah? Who doesn't know what Dharma means? Just out of interest. Do you know what Dharma means? You do? What does it mean? It's very, very important to understand Dharma, especially in what we're doing here. What we're doing here, this process that we're engaging in, this process that we're learning about is called Sanatana Dharma. Yeah? This whole structure of Vedic society is called Varnashram Dharma. So Dharma means occupation. Yeah? I suppose it's the translation of it. So what is the occupation? Sanatana Dharma, this process that we're learning about, is called Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana means eternal, Dharma means occupation. Let's put it simply. So our eternal occupation. Yeah? Varnashram Dharma is the way that the material world is structured and how it should be structured. As we were saying, on these personalities we're talking about on just now are Kshatriyas, which means warriors or the leader or the political people. That's their dharma, that's their occupation. Yeah? Does that make sense? So in Varnashram Dharma, it's called Varna and Ashram, Varnashram. There are 4 Varnas and 4 Ashrams. Now you've all probably heard of the caste system in India. Well, this caste system is a corruption of this Varnashram Dharma. It's got corrupted over time. But originally, 5,000 years ago, Vedic culture before, it was built on this Varnashram Dharma. That's how Krishna set it up in the first place. So, Varna is our natural ability. So there are Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Brahmana are the intelligent class, the priestly class. Yeah? Kshatriya is the warrior caste. Like these people here, these are Kshatriyas. Vaishya is the mercantile class, business people. You know, people who do business, agriculture, stuff like that. And Shudra is me. Just the people who I get told what to do. Labourers, you know, who are happy. But that's natural. You know, it's nothing. It doesn't mean that the Brahmana is any higher or better than the Shudra. You know? If you compare that system to the Brahmanas being the head, the Vaishyas being the arms, the Kshatriyas being the chest, and the Shudras being the legs, everything is important. So this system is beautiful because it's right, because everybody works with each other. Yeah? And the dharma of a Kshatriya is to protect. Yeah? And your duty is to protect and look after everybody else, right? Because that's their nature. And Bhishma was a supreme example of this. He lived this lifestyle perfectly. And when you read about Bhishma, understand his history and read all the things that he did duty. Yeah? But I made a little note, which I read, which I thought was very important in this regard. That Bhima, he did what he did in his life, including this vow that he took, because he thought it was his duty to do it, right? Yeah? To look for his father, for the sake of his father. Yes? What was the lesson we have to learn from all this? That sometimes our noblest intentions can pave the way to our greatest disasters. Disgust. A duty pursued without wisdom can lead to disaster and destruction. So Bhishma Dev's vow didn't just define his life, it defined an entire civilization. It shows you how important this personality is in this story, right? So, interesting. So this disrobing of Draupadi a little bit earlier on, Bhishma didn't protect Draupadi in that. He just remained out of it. Do you think that was the right thing to do? Discuss. If he was such a powerful personality, with so much duty, so much love of Dharma, and so upright and upstanding, and he didn't help Draupadi in that situation. Was that the right thing to do? Anybody? You think? For being Prema?
That was wrong.
That was wrong.
And whoever did not protect Draupadi in that assembly, every single one of them got annihilated. Only Dhritarashtra did not get killed, and Pandavas were tested. The rest of others, every single person who had a capacity to stand against Duryodhana got killed. Just by offending one devotee. So it's not just offending one devotee. If we have capacity to protect, we must stand and fight.
It's interesting subject matter.
Yes, it is.
A lot of discussion can come out of this, but it's fascinating, you know.
But that's what Krishna told Bhishma in the battlefield. That if you had stood there guard with your bow and arrow, the entire war would have been avoided in a way that not so many people would have been killed. And if you had stood there in that assembly to protect Draupadi, then no one would have dared to touch her side.
Interesting. Fascinating. Well, I would say sometimes, that's what it said there. Sometimes doing the right thing is you know, that vow that he took, and you know, is his duty to stand on the side of Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, or whatever, in that gambling match and everything. caused them terrible things. So, you know.
Yeah. What Krishna tells, is in Mahabharata, very detailed story, is that what Bhishma did was lower kind of dharma, lower. That I took a vow, I'm not going to break it, so he put his false pride in it. Yeah. What he forgot is the higher dharma, protecting a woman's chastity would class as a higher dharma. Doesn't matter what kind of dharma he was following. Yeah, there was a higher dharma, but he did not follow that. And for that he was punished.
That's right.
Even though Bhishma was the greatest devotee of Krishna, he is one of the Mahajanas. He is one of the Mahajanas. Mahajanas means that who we look up to following dharma and bhakti and everything. He was. Even then, Krishna did not spare him. Krishna organized his killing. Did not spare. So one thing we should really...
Do you think at the end though, when he does die, that was his nobility rose back up again?
Oh yes.
He did, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he suffered for... So there's many sufferings. One of them...
Remember the curse from the last verses
yeah.
around as well. This is that playing out
Yes.
also.
Yes.
Yeah. Because he didn't need to... Can we say what?
Mm.
Can we say what how he died, or you say him now?
No, that can come later. Well, as we said at the end of the Kurukshetra battle, he was laying on a bed of arrows. He had this ability, this boon, that he could die whenever he chose to die. And he wouldn't want to die until he had Krishna in front of him.
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful discussion in the Srimad Bhagavatam between Bhishma Dev and Krishna at that time before he left his body, but he could do that, yeah. He could close it.
He just lay there for days.
Days, yeah, many days, yeah.
Weeks and months. So Krishna Jayanti was recently when Krishna spoke to Gita. And he died sometime in January.
Is it 32 days or something?
Sometime in January.
Mm.
Was there.
It's really
Mm.
And the only desire was his to see Krishna.
Mm. But it's a fascinating situation. But of course, ultimately, it's all arranged by Krishna.
Oh yes.
Everything is arranged for the purpose of us to start to understand this stuff and how it goes. Ultimately. So, okay, thank you for that, your input. Because it's it's an interesting scenario, right? Interesting situation, isn't it?
Yeah, because finding fault in Krishna would be wrong.
Mm.
And he was the epitome of dharma. Whatever he said, he never spoke anything lie, and he followed, dharma. But at one place where Krishna wanted to follow a higher dharma, he did not do that.
Mm.
And that's what Krishna chastised him. And Krishna gave him a chance that while you're fighting from the side of Duryodhana, switch the side.
Mm.
He did not listen to Krishna then. Again, he didn't follow the higher dharma. Yeah. Because dharma was at the end of Bhagavad Gita where Krishna speaks last words. I think there is. That wherever Krishna is standing, that's what dharma is. And Bhishma knew it, but even then he fought from the side of Duryodhana.
Mm.
Did not switch the side to Pandavas. Because he tied himself to the throne of Hastinapura.
Yeah.
That's where my loyalty is. Yeah. It's quite intricate story. We can go hours and hours and talk about it.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. There's a lot of depth to these things, it really does go very deep. You can go and understand. It helps you to understand a lot of things, It's fascinating.
I think as well, if you try and I've tried to do a family tree, and it's impossible. You need
Yeah, right.
huge,
Mm.
yeah. Family tree. It's very, very huge.
Mm.
Yeah, I can do it. Outside of the main characters, even the main characters was really
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions or any other comments or corrections? Or?
That's what this dharma is very intricate. What he was talking about, lower dharma and higher dharma. So sometimes, in this particular situation, why Bhishma didn't stand up was because of his misplaced loyalties.
Yes.
Because of his vow that he will always protect the king. And he has been fed by the king. Whatever he gets the remuneration. So it is, if you are being paid by somebody, then you should be loyal to them. So since he was being paid by this Dhritarashtra, he has to be loyal to them. And the other logic was that Dharmaraja, obviously, he lost the dice game, and all the Pandavas became sorry, I won't call that, sorry. They became servants of Duryodhana because they have lost themselves also. Once they have lost all the kingdom, everything, riches, when the game went on, then first Dharmaraja gives away his last brothers, then Bhima, Arjuna, himself, and then Draupadi also. So Draupadi is a servant of Duryodhana, and then Duryodhana has the right to do whatever he wants to the servants. That is the royal rights. But these are all the lower dharmas. Yes. So when you are upholding the lower dharmas, and this happens generally in our society also. Like for example, you give charity, for example. So somebody on the streets, you give them charity, then they'll take that money and go and intoxicate and take alcohol. So is this charity, or actually you are causing bad karma to yourself? So the higher dharma, it's all very intricate.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely.
Define things. It's very difficult to define things in different implications in different places.
But for us, this is all very interesting. It's all wonderful stuff to examine and read and understand. But for us, the important thing is Sanatana Dharma, right? That's our focus. That should be our focus. Sanatana Dharma, our eternal Dharma, what our Dharma is. It's very interesting to understand all the intricacies of what went on here. But it's all there designed for a purpose, ultimately, to teach us what our Dharma is, which is Sanatana Dharma. Yes? So, yes.
When you say about Bhishma, but then Yudhishthira in the dice game could have walked away any time, couldn't it?
Yeah.
So he should have, because that was a major reason why he was taught as well.
Absolutely,
He was responsible for the.
Kshatriyas can be pretty reckless.
For that as well, because he kept going back.
But it's the nature of Kshatriya is a different nature. Sometimes it's. Yeah. we could go.
Apart from
Yes, he did.
Bhishma,
So he was invited to take part. Kshatriyas can't refuse. But what he did wrong is set boundaries. For any games or anything you play, you set boundaries. Okay, these are going to be boundaries. But he did not draw any boundaries. And you cannot kind of put your wife or any woman in that situation, and he did that. He should not have done that. That was adharma for him. Yes, as you said that, yes, he lost everything, then he got everything back from Dhritarashtra.
And back again.
Then, so he was invited again. Then he played again, and that's when the 12 years of exile was given to him. So that was wrong from, because he was Dharmaraj, so he should have known And whenever they were in trouble, they always took shelter of Krishna, but on this occasion, they did not consult Krishna.
Yeah.
They just went ahead and played the game.
That was another
That was
post
wrong.
of why. That's why
Oh, right,
when they
yeah.
come back from their, what was it, 12 years? You said?
12
They
years.
said we'll have some, we'll just have a little bit of the kingdom.
Yeah.
And it was no, and that's when they
So-
fine.
So a story basically tells this, that you should always have, for example, we have to go back to our guru to confirm whether we are doing the right thing or wrong thing, or listen to guru's lectures, and we get hint that what we should be doing in those situations. The guru is important. In this whole scenario, Pandavas, they did not consult Krishna. Krishna was basically their guru, mentor at the time. They did not consult. Bhishma did not, because he was a devotee of Krishna. He knew who Krishna was, and he didn't think about Krishna. That what would Krishna do? Like sometimes we ask questions like, what would Srila Prabhupada say in this situation? We asked him weeks back that what would Srila Prabhupada do or say? And we should always ask this question: what would Srila Prabhupada advise me to do in this situation if you were there? And we'll get answer. We'll get answer. But we need to be sincere in our effort, asking the genuine question, not fake one. We'll get answer. Pariprashnena sevaya. We have to inquire. Without inquiry, we can't. And Bhishma did not do, Pandavas did not do. That's the trouble. And they went through a lot of trouble. They went through a lot of trouble. Even though they were devotees. So do not think that you will become devotees and we will not suffer. They did not suffer. They did not suffer. Externally it may kind of looks like they suffer. But they were happy. They were together. That's why the Kunti, when Krishna was about to leave, that's a very, very famous verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. She's praying to Krishna that Krishna, please send torrents of troubles to me, but you stay. Yeah? Can you imagine? Whose 5 sons, there have been so much trouble, whose grandchildren were killed and everything, yet she is asking Krishna, please send torrents of troubles to me, but you be with us. That's the devotee. We shouldn't be bothered about troubles as long as we have our beats and chanting and connected to Krishna.
Don't gamble, man.
That's what the 4 executives say. No gamble, no cheating.
What was the intake of today's? What is the intake?
What's the intake? Well, don't gamble. Follow the 4 regulative principles and chant Hare Krishna. And listen to Krishna. Don't ignore Krishna.
First place. Listen to first place, not to the Lord.
That's right, yeah. Like I said there, sometimes it's doing your duty. That little quote was I thought was very, very important and very relevant to this. Sometimes our noblest intentions can pave way to our greatest disasters. The duty pursued without wisdom can lead to disaster and destruction. That's the important thing. We have to really examine our motives and our actions within our duty. Yes.
But ultimately, whole of Mahabharata was orchestrated by Krishna, because he wanted to annihilate all demons and bad people. And that's what he did.
Yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.